Hi, thanks for joining us today. My name is Evelyn Waidera Müller, and I am a psychologist. I am passionate about educating, inspiring, and empowering people or my viewers so that they can be able to lead a happy and fulfilled life. Today, we're going to talk about discouragement. We're going to explore what is discouragement, what causes it, what triggers it, and how can one push through, what helps one to carry on during moments of discouragement. Joining me for that conversation is a dear friend of mine, Katie Klein. I know Katie, I think 11 and a half years now, Katie, it's been. My son was 6 months old when we met each other, and he's almost turning 12. We met here in Germany. So I'm from Kenya. Katie is originally from the UK, but we both reside in Germany, and that's where we met each other. Katie is a mother of 3. She is a freelance business English teacher, but she's also involved in church work where she goes to church, and also women's ministry. And the reason I invited Katie is because she recently went through a phase of discouragement. So Katie, you have many jobs and roles, but you experience discouragement in relation to your calling. Can you maybe just start out by explaining to us or explain to the viewers what exactly is your calling and how do you live that out on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, hi Eve. Thank you that you've invited me here today. I would say I don't have a what I would call a specific calling, for example, being a doctor or something like that. But I have more of a general calling, and I would say first and foremost, my calling is to follow Jesus Christ, and as part of that, I try to encourage people to get to know him and to grow deeper in relationship with him. So that could be through praying with them. That could be through doing a Bible study with them so that they can get to know him for themselves. So it could be looking for opportunities, being alert as I go through my day to opportunities to talk about him. So generally that is what I would call my calling.
Okay, so you experience discouragement in relation to that, like you are going through a phase where you are asking yourself, is this really what I should be doing? And is this having any impact whatsoever? But then we'll talk about that later. And I know most people who are watching this, if you're watching this, you've probably gone through discouragement, disheartenment, and being weary, or maybe you're going through it at the moment. And we all sort of know or have an idea of how that feels like. But nonetheless, I would like for us to just pinpoint like the thoughts and feelings you were experiencing at that time. So if you could just walk us through, like, how did it feel like? What thoughts were you having at the time? So that we can actually help the person who's going through this realize, this is not a unique experience to me. This is something that all people experience. So what were you at the time when you had this phase of where you were feeling discouraged? What exactly were you feeling, and what were the thoughts you were having?
Yeah, I think one of the big feelings or thoughts that was going around in my mind was, is there a point to what I'm doing? So I started to question, what's the point? Sometimes that was a bigger question, what's the point? Sometimes it was what's the point? I'm doing the same things again and again, and it felt like there was no point. I also felt maybe resentment because there were things that I would like to be doing that I couldn't do or can't do because of my life situation. And so that was very frustrating as well. Maybe things that I would like to see as part of my calling, which are not currently part of my calling. And yeah, I suppose I feel sometimes like because of my life circumstances, it's like my hands are tied and I can't do things that I would like to do, even though I keep trying to move to something else. Maybe that's a good picture of what it felt like, being a bit trapped, but also just almost like a fogginess, am I, yeah, almost as if like a fog descended, like, I don't see clearly what I'm meant to be doing. It all seems a bit foggy and unclear and confused, maybe, what is the next step, or do I just keep doing what I'm doing? Yeah.
And I think I can resonate with some of the things that you're saying there, and that's why I actually asked you to do this with me, because when we were talking, I sort of felt like, I know these feelings. I've had this before. It's not that you're the only person who's gone through such a phase. I've gone through such phases as well. And I know that feeling of being disorientated and being disillusioned. Like, am I wasting my time? Does this make sense? Is there any point in this? Is there anyone profiting from this? And also what I found in the past, what I used to do as well, I would go through that and then I would come to that point where I start self-rejecting and putting myself down. So like, it has something to do with you, like you are the reason why this is happening, like there's nothing that you can do, that will have any meaning or whatever. So I would start like, it would be general, and then at some point it would come down to me putting myself down, and I've come a long way to stopping that. But that is also something, maybe if you're watching this, you might actually be going through that you go through all this, that process. First it's general, and then you sort of project that onto yourself. It has something to do with me. I'm the problem. I'm the one who's confused. I'm the one. And to just know that is sort of normal. It's not completely unique to you. So but but when you were going through that, Katie, so discouragement and being disheartened is not something that happens spontaneously. It's not something that we wake up and we feel disheartened or discouraged. There's always something that triggers it. So in your case, what would you say triggered this whole process? What made you start questioning what you're doing, or thinking that what you're doing is not impactful at all? What was the situation surrounding that?
Yeah, so I think a big trigger for me was a school reunion, which took place a few months ago, early summer, and it made me remember about my school, which was very academic. It was it was a girls' school, so it was about teaching girls to thrive and excel and be world changers, I suppose, the leaders of tomorrow. And as I sat with these women, these wonderful women, who were high-flying doctors and lawyers and academics, in many different fields, I felt like I had to apologize a little bit for what, because I hadn't achieved so much professionally in my eyes. So that was one trigger. I started to compare myself to them and think, well, oh dear, I better stay quiet and say sorry for what I'm doing. And so that was one trigger. Another trigger was, I suppose, lockdown as well. during this time of Corona times, we've not had the same opportunities to, say, organize events or to meet up with people in the same way. And that is a big, or in the past has been a big part of what I've done, what I call my ministry. Either people don't want, because of Corona, people can't meet up, or some people, many women are busy, maybe working or doing things. So people haven't been as available. So I've had a bit more time on my hands, which has set me questioning, well, is this really what I should be doing? I think those were the, maybe, feeling like I'm not really contributing. Those sorts of things have, sometimes my kids question me, what are you doing, mummy, they call me. If they can't see what I'm doing, then maybe it's of no value.
And I can really, I know when I face discouragement, it's most of the time like you say, comparing myself to others. That is a big one. I think if we start comparing ourselves, so what happens to me is, like, I go on Instagram, when I'm on Instagram or social media sites, and then I see this person did this and they did that, and and I'm like, what am I doing with myself? Like this, I'm not doing these big things, and I immediately go into that spiral, and sometimes it can get really bad. But then, just knowing, okay, this is triggering me, I need to be careful about this, but when it happens, most of the time, maybe we're not aware of it. Like, I've compared myself to someone, and I've thought that because I've seen them doing this, like you with your classmates, thinking, oh, they are doctors and they're high-flying people in the society, that what you're doing doesn't seem as good enough or as equivalent at all to them. And that is one danger, definitely. But also, obviously, like you said, lockdown is something that has set many people actually in a spiral of discouragement and like wondering, like, what am I doing with my life? What do I need to be doing with my life? And it's good sometimes it's good to actually have that time to reflect about that. But sometimes it's just noticing, like, when maybe a similar example to lockdown would be being sick. Like, when you're sick and you actually can't live out what you're called to do, then you feel like you're not contributing and you feel like a waste. And that could also actually lead one into that spiral of, putting yourself down, doubting everything, being disorientated. What I've also found in my case, like when I look back, the things that have actually caused me as well, like apart from those two things, maybe what I could add to that is the feeling of being overwhelmed, like when I've taken on too much. So I take on too much, have these really high expectations on myself, and then I reach a point, obviously, and I can't manage it, and then I'm like, oh no, this is too much. And no, in fact, actually, I don't say this is too much. And it's now I've actually learned to actually realize when I feel disheartened and discouraged, have I taken on too much? That is one question I ask myself. But in the past, I would sort of like think, oh, I'm not managing this, I'm not good enough, I'm not able to do this, so I start going into that spiral of putting myself down and getting disheartened and discouraged. But in reality, I've actually set my bar way, way too high. Like no human being can achieve what I'm up, trying to get at. And I think realizing that has helped me a long way, to just actually, when I feel like I'm going through a season of discouragement, to actually evaluate, am I comparing myself to someone else? Am I in a position that I can actually not do what I would love to do, like being sick or lockdown or so on and so forth? Or have I taken on too much? Am I actually overwhelming myself in this situation? And I think those could be helpful pointers for someone who's maybe going through this, through a phase of a season of discouragement, or so that they just ask themselves these quick 3 questions.
Yeah, I definitely relate to the last one as well, Eve, that you say. Yeah, sometimes I take things on to maybe prove something to myself, or yeah, and I don't really, sometimes I don't recognize it immediately, like you say. Sometimes it's only when it gets too much that I actually realize that I should have said no to a few things, or I definitely.
And have you found that when you do that, that you actually go into that spiral of, like, when you realize, okay, I'm not going to manage this, that you start going through that process of, oh, this is doesn't make any sense, I'm not able, like the things that we mentioned. Do you notice that?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's because I start to I go from, I want to prove myself, to, oh, I can't do it anyway, so I kind of go go between the two, yo-yo between the two, or I just make everyone's life around me miserable because I push them, or I try to be like a slave driver to achieve something. Not so. But then get discouraged when they don't want to go along with my my plans or whatever I've got in mind. So that can be a way of discouraging. Exactly. If something that I think, some plan that I've made that other people don't go along with, that discourages me a lot as well.
Okay, so that is also something that does play into, that does make you discouraged as well, like when you, but then and then realizing that maybe I've taken on too much, or I'm having way too high expectations of others, that they're not actually able to deliver what I want.
Exactly.
And coming back to yourself that, okay, maybe I've got a way too high expectation of myself.
Maybe I'm pushing for too much, and actually there's a lot more peace in just accepting, letting go of things sometimes, and not trying to do too much.
Okay, so what helped you? So you've actually, you're not in that dark place where you are a few months ago. What would you say helped you to sort of like overcome and sort of come out on the other side, and to carry on with what you're doing? Because you didn't stop, you're still doing what you used to do. And this is not the first time we've actually had that, like, you've been in a dark place. We've had this conversation. I remember once in a cafe, like I think that was like 7 years ago or something like that, where you were feeling, and it's not just unique to you, it's something that I go as well through every now and again. But then what helped you? So looking back to this experience that you had recently, what actually helped you to sort of like carry on and come out on the other side and not give up on what you're doing, or just stop what you're doing? What has helped you to carry on?
I think part of it was realizing that we all have different seasons. So I have different seasons that I'm in. And seeing that God's at work in all of them, I think that was a big part of it. Accepting that there might be other things at another time, but at the moment God's given me other things to do, and so all I can do is serve him, wholeheartedly, as with all that I've got in the things that he's given me. And maybe one day a different door will be opened, but part of it is accepting, part of it has been accepting that this is where I am at the moment. and accepting that people have different stories. I have a different story from those women that I was at school with, and yeah, that is, yeah, it's hard because since we all have different stories, there's always going to be somebody who has something we don't have, I suppose, or something that we want. So that's, but I think that's a process for me as well, you know, that maybe at some point my circumstances might change, and some of these things that I would long to be part of, or would love to do, or have as part of my calling, it feels like there are things that are very deep inside that I would love to do, but those doors aren't open at the moment. And accepting that, and that I can't change that, but trusting God that those things may happen in the future, but I don't need to worry about that. And yeah, something that happened as well is that some new doors opened, so that helped me. Yeah, maybe it was just being open to things that I've never, well, since I've been at home with the kids, it may sound very strange, but it probably does sound very strange, but I try to avoid earning money. Let's put it like that, because I thought if I was going to seek God's kingdom first, I didn't want to get distracted by money. I used to enjoy earning money when I worked, and I didn't want that to interfere or distract me from my focus. And so I avoided it, and I didn't want to go in that direction. But then more recently, some doors have opened to, as you said, to do more business English teaching. So I've I suppose been flexible to see, well, what doors are open at the moment, and that's how I'm going to serve God at the moment. So, and another season may come along at some point. So that's basically where how I've got through. But as you say, Eve, for me, I've had it's quite up and down. I don't really have like a clear, this is what I'm doing, this is my path. It's much more trial and error for me. And I try to be open to whatever doors are open for me. But part of it for me is a journey, working out what my calling is. I try something, it works. I try something else, it doesn't work. So, and trying not to get discouraged when things don't work. Look for a different open door, something that is possible.
And I think that's how most people feel, Katie. I think it's only rare. It's the rare. Only a few people have like a definite calling, like where they're called and like this is what you're going to, there's those people who when they were children, they would say, I want to be a doctor, like this is all I wanted to be, and they become a doctor and they're like, this is all I wanted to be. And but then I think most of us are sort of like doing trial and error, like you're doing, like you say, or you sort of have like an awareness that God is leading you a certain way, and maybe that is just for a season. And then the season ends, and then the season changes, and but then generally, like you say, like you ministering to people or helping people, discipling people, that is something that is deep in your heart, and you've sort of done it in different ways throughout the years. And I think maybe a calling could be something that is constant, but we actually do it differently on a day-to-day basis, depending on the phase that in life we are in, So in one phase, it might mean mentoring one person, in another phase doing a women's Bible study, in another phase doing business English, whatever, and it just varies. It's not something that is constant. And I thank you for saying that, because I think most people actually are like that, and they might feel like, what is wrong with me? I am not able to identify what my calling is. I'm not, it's not so clear, and I'm not following, but then the reality is that it might not be as constant, and it might not be as clear, and it might be seasonal, and it's okay. God still uses that, if as long as we just stay close to him, and just listen out to where he's leading us now, and not in 5 years time. So and so what helped you, like you say what helped you sort of like come out of that dark place was just accepting that the season that you're in, this is where I'm in at the moment, and I just have to accept it. And because in your case it's comparison, but then also this, you have these ideas of how it should look like, but then reality doesn't match your imagination. And just accepting, well, this is the reality that I'm in, and that's okay. And then you say just becoming aware of new opportunities and actually taking hold of them, or using them out, living them out, like doing the business English. What I've found in the past, so those are two things that can be helpful, what Katie said, but what I've found in the past for me, or additionally what I've found is gratitude. Like actually practicing gratitude does really bring me back down to earth, because when I start remembering like all the good things that are in my life, or all the things that have actually worked out, so the small things. So for example, a good example is I had this women's group that I was leading for 2 years, and when I started leading this women's group, my German was pretty bad, really, really bad. It's actually amazing that those women came to my meeting for like 2 years. It's just, but then I had this expectation of like, this is how, like, these are my goals, and these goals must be achieved at the end of this like 2 years, but they were not achieved, and that really discouraged me. It really, really discouraged me. And then going into prayer, and then realizing that, no, wait a minute, these people like came 2 years voluntarily. Like that is a big achievement in itself, that they came every week for 2 years to your group. You need to honor that. So it's actually looking at the small things and the friendships that were formed, or formed during that season, and so on and so forth. So sometimes it's letting go of the big prize and actually noticing the small prizes that we sometimes just completely ignore, because we have this goal set, like in your case, maybe the big, this big whatever you have in your imagination, and realizing, no, actually there's so many things that have happened, small things that are worth being thankful for. And that really helps me to, change my perspective and actually realize, no, it's not as dark as I imagined or I thought. That is helpful for me. Definitely. And also another thing that helps me as well is to realize, or to accept, that change or things that we want to achieve don't happen immediately. I'm not a patient person. I'm like, I want it now. Whatever I do has to happen now, and just realizing, no, some things take years, they take many years, and it's okay, and just because it is a process to it which takes many years doesn't mean that what I'm doing has no impact, even if I don't see it now,
I think you're totally right. I see it really, we've talked about this as well, like plowing and sowing, a bit like a farmer, and I think we may not see the fruit of what we do, but I think that is part of not, what's helped me not be discouraged is also what I would call faith in God, that I bring the little bit that I bring, as I dig, as I sow, as I plant, as I water, I bring that little bit that I can bring, and he is going to do something with it. I may or may not see it, but it does have value, because he's using it. As we give it to him, he's going to do something with it. And yeah, that has been a huge encouragement, because then when I pray, I don't pray, show me now. I say, pray, I pray, you do it in your timing and make it so much more amazing than I can imagine. But then it's giving it to him and letting him do more with it than I can.
Yeah. When you sow and plant, some people might not know what you mean. They
Okay.
might literally think you're sowing and planting.
Yeah, like a farmer. I'm not a good gardener, I'm afraid. What I mean is, like, maybe time that I've spent with somebody, and maybe some words that I've shared with them, maybe a Bible passage, or we've looked at a Bible passage together. Those things, sink into our hearts, and they change our lives. They change us on the inside. And those things take time to grow. I think it's very much like parenting as well. My husband often says this, that I'm planting, like I'm feeding into my kids' lives now, but I will only see the fruit. I will only see the impact of it in 10 years' time, probably, or 15 years' time. And that is sometimes really hard on a day-to-day basis, to not see, positive customer satisfaction when we talk about it like that, from kids, for example. When you don't see the impact of what you're doing, it's hard to keep going. But if I've started to imagine it like a farmer, or a gardener, I wish I was a better one, but planting something, but it will grow. It grows, but it takes time.
Yeah, I think that is a brilliant analogy, Katie. Like, I think if anyone who's watching this is a mother, they can relate to that completely. Like, when you're investing in your children, it takes years, literally decades, before you can actually see the hard work that you did, and just having that faith, I will continue because I love my child, and because I know if I don't put the restrictions, help them with this and that, teach them this or that they will not flourish as human beings. So I have to do this as a mother. This is my responsibility out of love for them, and it takes years until you actually see the returns. And I think farmers, I doubt if there's any farmers watching this, but farmers know this as well. And they know this as well. When they plant their crops, they will one day harvest them, but they put in so much time, so many hours, so many effort, and so on, before they can actually harvest anything out of that land. And I think it's the same using those pictures. It's the same with our calling, like, or whatever that we do to contribute to the world, that it takes years sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes you immediately see the results. But in most cases, and especially when you're feeling discouraged, it's one of those that the harvest is gonna take years. And you just have to have faith that the harvest is coming, the harvest is coming, the harvest is coming, the harvest is coming. I just have to be faithful and continue doing what I need to do, my bit. And then I will look back one day and be like, wow, I'm so glad I didn't stop, and that I carried on, even when it felt like it was a waste of time and it wasn't having any impact. Yeah, definitely. If you found this conversation helpful, then give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need encouragement by subscribing to my channel. And if you want to find out more about my work, then check out the link in the subscription below. You can also follow me on Facebook. My Facebook name is @emüllerfüllfieldlife. That will also be shown here now. or you can follow me on Instagram at Evelyn_Müller. Katie actually is a part of the International Baptist Church in Bielefeld here in Germany, so an English-speaking church here in Germany. So if you're an English speaker and you're looking for an English-speaking church and you happen to be in Bielefeld or somewhere near Bielefeld, then check out the IBC Church, the International Baptist Church. You'll find the link in the description as well. So thanks for watching and see you next time.